Welcome to the deep dive. We've got this really fascinating scientific report on dopamine today.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
And we're going to try and cut through some of the hype, forget just the pleasure molecule idea.
Right.
Our mission today is to figure out what dopamine really does for your happiness, but maybe more for what actually drives you.
Exactly. And hopefully find some useful insights people can actually use.
Yeah, that's the goal. So dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter, right? A chemical messenger.
That's it. Think of it as helping your brain cells, your neurons, talk to each other. It's in a couple of chemical families, technically, but the main thing is it carries signals.
And it gets a lot of them. The report lists memory, motor control, mood, attention, even sleep and learning. It seems like it does everything.
It's involved in a huge range of functions, definitely. It's not just about feeling good. That's kind of a simplification.
So the link to happiness isn't direct.
Well, it's probably more indirect. It's more about the motivation, the drive to go after things that are rewarding. Achieving those things, that's what contributes to happiness.
Okay. So it's the engine, not necessarily the destination feeling itself. Let's dig in a bit. Chemically speaking, what is this stuff?
So picture a specific structure. It has what's called a catechol core. That's like a benzene ring with some bits attached and a liming group. But what's maybe more useful is where it comes from.
Right.
It's made from L-tyrosine. That's an amino acid you get mostly from protein in your diet.
Oh, so what you eat matters here.
Directly. Your body turns tyrosine into something called LDOPA, and then LDOPA becomes dopamine. So yeah, diet has a real impact.
Wow. Okay. And then this dopamine needs to plug into something. The
Yeah.
report mentioned receptors.
Exactly. Neurons have docking stations for dopamine. There are 5 main types, D1 through D5.
Language of D5, okay.
And they fall into 2 main families, D1-like and D2-like. There are all these complex things called G-protein coupled receptors, basically switches on the cell surface.
And what happens when dopamine clicks in?
Depends on the receptor and where it is in the brain. It can either excite the next neuron or calm it down. Like D1 receptors are pretty important for memory, and D3 seems really involved in motivation, that wanting circuit we talked about.
Interesting. Different keys for different locks, sort of?
Yeah.
What about these dopamine pathways the report mentions? Are those like routes in the brain?
Pretty much, yeah. Think of them as major highways. There are a few key ones. The mesolimbic pathway. That's a big one for today. It goes from an area called the VTA to the nucleus accumbens. Super central to reward and motivation.
Mesolimbic. Got it. Any others relevant here?
Well, the mesocortical pathway is important too. It goes to your prefrontal cortex, the planning and thinking part of your brain. Helps with focus, decision-making, stuff like that. Also involved in motivation.
Okay.
And just to show the range, there's the nigrostriatal pathway, which is mostly about controlling movement. Problems there are linked to Parkinson's. Shows how wide-ranging dopamine's job is.
Right. So focusing back on that mesolimbic pathway, the reward one, how does dopamine work there? Is that the pleasure bit?
That's where the classic reward feeling comes from, yes.
Yeah.
But the newer understanding is that dopamine is less about the liking the actual pleasure and more about the wanting, the motivation to seek the reward.
Wanting, not liking.
Think about survival, eating, drinking. These things feel good, sure, but dopamine really kicks in to make sure you seek them out again. It reinforces those essential behaviors.
And I read somewhere it spikes before you even get the reward.
Exactly. That anticipatory release is powerful. It's the get up and go get it signal. And that's also the mechanism that addictive drugs exploit. They flood the system, creating an unnatural wanting.
Right. That makes sense. So it really bridges wanting something and actually doing something about it.
It's crucial for that. Initiating action, sustaining it towards a goal. It even helps weigh the effort versus the potential reward, like a quick cost-benefit check.
And if you don't have enough.
Low dopamine can definitely lead to low motivation. Feeling tired, lethargic, just no drive. It's also involved in just starting to move physically.
Okay. So gets us moving, keeps us going. What about learning and habits? How does dopamine fit in there?
Oh, this is super interesting. Dopamine is key for what's called synaptic plasticity.
Changing brain connections.
That's, yeah, basically strengthening or weakening the links between neurons. When you do something and get a reward, the dopamine release essentially tells the brain, hey, that was good. Let's strengthen the connections that led to this.
So it reinforces the pathway.
Exactly. It's like reinforcement learning. Dopamine also acts as a prediction error signal. Did you get more reward than expected? Less? That difference helps you learn and adjust your behavior next time.
And that's how habits form, good and bad.
Pretty much. Repeated dopamine release strengthens those neural circuits until the behavior becomes almost automatic. Different receptors, like D1 and D2, might play slightly different roles in forming versus expressing habits.
Fascinating. So can we, influence our own dopamine levels, make things better naturally?
Absolutely. The report highlights a few things. We mentioned diet. Getting enough tyrosine from protein is fundamental.
Right.
Physical activity is a great way to boost dopamine. Good sleep is also vital. It helps regulate the whole system. Receptor sensitivity, too.
What else?
Things like meditation, getting some sunlight, managing stress, they all seem to play a role. You definitely have some agency here through lifestyle
Well,
choices.
that's good to know. But what if things go wrong? The report links dopamine to mental health issues.
Yes. Imbalances are implicated in several conditions. Low dopamine function is often seen in depression, links to that lack of motivation and anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure.
Okay.
Addiction, as we touched on, is fundamentally about dopamine dysregulation, the cravings, the cycle of use.
Makes sense.
And there are also links, though complex, to conditions like ADHD with attention and motivation and schizophrenia, involving dopamine signaling pathways too. It really underscores how vital balance is.
And dopamine isn't acting alone in the brain, is it? It interacts with other chemicals.
Definitely not alone. It's in constant conversation with other neurotransmitters. Serotonin, for example, which affects mood and impulse control. Norepinephrine, involved in alertness and stress. Glutamate, the main excitatory signal. They all interact with the dopamine system in complex ways, affecting reward, motivation, learning. It's a whole network.
And science is still mapping all this out.
Oh, for sure. Research is constantly evolving. The big shift has been recognizing dopamine's huge role in motivation, moving beyond just pleasure. Scientists are digging deeper into how it affects learning, habit formation, the specific roles of different receptors. It's a really active field.
So wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be that dopamine is absolutely vital, maybe less for pure pleasure and much more for driving our motivation, helping us learn, and shaping how we go after our goals.
That's a great summary. It's fundamental to our drive.
And crucially, we can influence it through things like diet, exercise, sleep. Our choices matter.
They really do. Understanding that role gives you a bit more insight into your own actions and feelings.
Which brings us to a final thought to leave everyone with. Knowing how much dopamine fuels the pursuit of goals, that wanting and drive. How might consciously focusing on and appreciating the process, the journey itself, rather than just fixating on the final reward, actually boost our well-being and keep that motivational fire burning?
That's definitely something to think about. Focusing on the process, not just the prize.
Something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.